time to have a little fun here, especially for those of you who are concerned about all the negative news surrounding President Trump. The Washington Examiner just published the odds of President Trump winning re-election according to an online gambling site called betonline.ag. And it's updated regularly. And what they found was that Trump's odds of winning re-election, even after this horrible past week of yet another media meltdown, Trump's odds of winning have utterly surged over the last few months and are now far higher than any challenger on the list. In fact, there are currently more bets on Trump than all other challengers' names on the 2020 election list combined. And that includes, if you can believe it, 45 different potential challengers. Trump has more people betting on him than the total amount of those who back all 45 potential candidates combined. Right now, Trump is a 10-1 favorite over his closest challenger, which according to BetOnline is Kamala Harris, the senator from California. Hillary Clinton's odds have actually dropped to 66-1 against Trump. I mean, that's just embarrassing. 66-1 against Trump in a potential 2020 rematch. She's behind Bernie Sanders, whose odds are currently now 14-1, Biden's 16-1, Oprah's 33-1, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's 50-1. Again, they're all, Hillary's behind every one of them. That says a lot for sure. Now, while we're having a little fun with this, it is certainly the case that odds making has a methodology behind it. And one of the things that these odds makers are saying is that if you think about it, Trump can quite literally say anything. He can tweet anything. He can seemingly do anything. And his poll numbers do not take a hit. He can get 24/7 negative media coverage that uses the term impeachment more than 200 times in a matter of 48 hours. He can get a former CIA director to publicly accuse him of treason after a summit with Vladimir Putin. By the way, do you remember that? Do you remember the 24/7 CNN and MSNBC coverage on whether the president actually demonstrated for all to see that Vladimir Putin does have something on him? That Vladimir Putin is indeed running our nation by proxy because of some damaging information he has on Trump via that whole summit meeting. Do you remember that? What happened to that? What happened to that whipped up frenzy over the threat of Russia against our national security? Well, you see, a new false narrative came up, a new false crisis, a new media-driven, media-invented feeding frenzy started after, around the Manafort conviction and Cohen's plea bargain where he's promising to tell all on Trump. Not that there's anything to tell. And certainly not that there's anything even remotely impeachable. But that doesn't matter anymore. The specifics of the president holding a summit talk promising peaceful coexistence with a Russian nuclear power, that meant nothing. And the facts don't mean anything now with Manafort and Cohen, right? The media will just move on to the next thing, forgetting about all the other manufactured crises that preceded, just to achieve one goal, and that is to remove Donald Trump from office. And I have to say that I think that odds making like this, I think that's part of what's driving this lunacy, this propaganda frenzied media. It is true. Despite everything they've tried, the nation is simply not turning on Trump. Trump can literally do anything he wants. He said that much during the campaign. Do you remember that? He actually said that he could shoot someone on the streets and still win the election or the nomination. I forget which one it was. But here's the important point that Trump was making that the elites in the media, as well as in politics, simply do not understand. The point that Trump was making is that the people are so fed up. They are so absolutely fed up with our political and economic and media elites that there's nothing that Trump can do that could even come close to evoking the kind of disgust and moral outrage that they feel towards our establishment elites. Scott Rasmussen wrote about this back in 2010 in his book, Mad as Hell. He found substantial data that showed that there was, in fact, a major paradigm shift taking place among the American electorate. And we can add on this channel, as we say, the world electorate as well. But that paradigm shift was that people were increasingly seeing politics not as left versus right or liberal versus conservative per se, but rather as the people versus the ruling class, average citizens versus the political, economic, and media establishment, that more and more people blame for the troubles besetting our nation, our economy, and the world. Donald Trump has tapped into that, and he has promised to be the champion of those who want to see the swamp drained, the elites admonished and defeated, and the deep state exposed. And he's largely made very good on those promises. And so what the immediate elite and our political elite simply don't understand is that there's simply nothing that Trump can possibly do that could provoke as much disgust and moral outrage that tens of millions of people have towards the Washington establishment. There's nothing he could do that could even compare with it. This is why his poll numbers simply aren't falling the way the media wants them to. And that's because the anger out there is so intense against the deep state, against the swamp, that there's simply nothing Trump can do short of embracing the deep state to swamp. And short of that, there's just nothing Trump can do to provoke the kind of outrage that can even come close to the outrage felt by tens of millions of people against the globalist political and economic and media elite that we see as doing nothing less than destroying our nation, its borders, its economy, its culture, all for their own political and economic gain. Now, on a more serious note, we, of course, back in November of 2016, we predicted that Donald Trump would, in fact, win the presidential election. That's how this channel started. We started on November 1st, 2016, in terms of the daily commentary that we offer here. We started back in the first week of November, making an extended argument over the course of 7 days. I posted one video per day from the 1st to the 7th. We made the extended argument for why Donald Trump would win the presidency on Tuesday, November the 8th, which, of course, he did, to the shock and outrage of pollsters and pundits and the so-called journalists throughout the mainstream media. But one of the scholars that I accessed for that prediction was the Stony Brook University professor Helmut Norpoth and his excellent election predictor known as the primary model. Now, according to Norpoth's model, the popular vote winner in the primary goes on to win the general election. Norpoth bases such an observation by studying elections going all the way back to 1912, which was the first time when the candidates had to win a number of primaries. And in each case, the candidate that was stronger in the primary went on to win the general election. Indeed, when so many were predicting a Romney landslide back in 2012, it was Norpoth that had predicted since January of that year, several months before the election, that Obama would be the one who would win by several percentage points. And of course, he was right. Now, he recognized that while Hillary barely managed to squeak by the primary challenge from Bernie Sanders, in fact, Bernie Sanders won, Trump soundly defeated 15 or 16 of the Republicans' finest, earning more votes than any Republican candidate in history. But Norpoth's model has another indicator, and that involves the timing of the election. He calls it the pendulum swing. The incumbent party, the party controlling the White House, always wins if it's a second-term election. Almost always, I should say. But almost always loses if it's a third-term election. Americans seem to like to have a president for 8 years, but not 12. In that election patterns are rather consistent with limiting the incumbent party to 2 terms. The one exception since 1960 was the election of George Bush, the first in 1988, succeeding Ronald Reagan. And so Norpoth predicted that after 2 terms of Obama, the pendulum was poised to swing back to the Republicans in 2016. So these are two indicators that Romney, for example, simply didn't have in 2012. Obama went unchallenged in the primary and thereby won big, and he was going for his second term, which almost always is successful. The exceptions for that, by the way, are Carter in 1980 and Bush Sr. in 1992. Both involved significant challenges during the primaries from Ted Kennedy and Pat Buchanan, respectively. And so with Norpaul's model that served quite well back in 2016, as President Trump remains extremely popular among his base to fend off any challenger that might come up to him for the nomination, he should win the 2020 election without a problem. Barring a major challenge from within his party, the trends going back all the way from 1912 is he will win. And by the way, Trump currently has the highest approval rating among Republicans of any president in recent history. It's right up there with George W. Bush right after 9/11. So there you go. Those of you who are concerned about all this negative news that we hear from the mainstream media, turn it off. Ignore it. Focus on the 2018 midterms, which are looking very, very good for the Republicans to maintain control of the House. Get ready, for what looks to be a very successful re-election campaign for President Donald Trump in 2020. Don't forget to click on that link below and get your copy of my book, Classical versus Modern Education, for only 99 cents for a limited time. And as always, please like, comment, and subscribe. Click on our Patreon link below and become a monthly supporter of this channel and help us to continue to analyze current events in light of awesome conservative trends so that you can personally and professionally flourish. God bless.